Hi, I'm Wendy Friesen. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about depression because it is a really depressing subject and a lot of people are struggling with it, especially these days with the way the economy is and all the bad news and just, the struggles in life in general. So I found an interesting article on depression that's about the genetic expression of depression. It says clear new insights into the genetics of depression. I hope you don't mind if I read it to you just a bit. And then I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking about this and how this applies to how you can change your brain and direct your brain to get over depression. The psychologist Rollo May once described depression as the inability to construct a future. Of course, that's really fascinating to me, and I'll tell you why at the end of the article. This inability can affect up to 14 million Americans, 7% of the population. This month has brought some potentially exciting news: 2 genetic studies with major ramifications for the treatment and diagnosis of major depressive disorder. One new study published in the Nature of Medicine suggests that a pathway called MAPK and one gene in particular from this pathway, MPK1, are significantly dysregulated in certain areas of the brain of individuals with major depression. These results were obtained by looking for significant gene expression changes in post-mortem brains in 21 individuals with major depressive disorders. In other words, they cut open the brains of dead people and looked at their genes. In the rat and mouse models, they showed that not only did raising MPK1 levels lead to depressive symptoms, but that antidepressant treatment reduced the expression of MPK1. They demonstrated that MPK1 increases during stress and can negatively regulate MAPK, a key signaling pathway involved in neuronal plasticity, function, and survival. So what this means is, certainly the effects of stress we know create illness, affect our immune system, make us sad, depressed, and angry, and do all sorts of horrible things to us. But showing that the stress was what negatively affected this MAPK, resulting in a genetic change that is connected with depression. So it appears that MPK1 may be important in depression because when too much of it's around, it disturbs the growth and the viability of neurons in a part of the brain known as the hippocampus. This is a major factor believed to contribute to symptoms of major depression. So interesting. It disturbs the growth and the viability of the neurons in the hippocampus. So if it's disturbing them, where normally you would have the kind of growth you need in your brain to keep you happy or optimistic or looking at your future, being something that you're going to want to live in, instead this affects it so that you don't have the ability to direct your brain like that. So anyway, I think this is pretty interesting, and how it relates to you and the neuroplasticity of your brain is what I find most fascinating. It says for depression, these advances will be greatly welcome because even though antidepressants may be highly effective, the rates of adverse drug reaction can also be high, such as suicide and a host of other things. Also, patients' responses to a given drug vary greatly. Well, they say that how did they say it? That the effects of antidepressants may be highly effective, and we have to go back to all the things I've talked about with antidepressant drugs and how the pharmaceutical companies are manipulating their studies, hiding the studies, even getting fined and getting in trouble for hiding the studies they have that show that antidepressants have no greater effect than placebo. And in fact, in one of my videos, I talked to you about how in order to make their drug have a higher effect, they took the placebo group and they actually screened them out for people who were highly susceptible to placebo. The reason they did this is because if their drug is only performing as well as placebo, what we need to do is get people in the placebo group who are not susceptible to placebo, who don't have that kind of mind effect. Now they will get a lower response, and our drug, being the same, will show that it's more effective than placebo. And one of the things that I would like to do the most is open everybody's eyes to the ineffectiveness of antidepressants and why they're ineffective. And are you really willing to trade in what little peace of mind you have for the possible suicidal tendencies and the obesity problem because you gain weight and that makes you even more depressed? and the suppressing your sexual abilities, and just so many things that are side effects. It's hard to imagine that you could decide that, okay, I want to see if I can feel a little bit better, but I want to have all these other horrible things happen as well. So now, here's something else that's really interesting. I like this lot. Okay, this is another one from CNN. It says, can meditation change your brain? Contemplative neuroscientists believe it can. Can people strengthen the brain circuits associated with happiness and positive behavior just as we're able to strengthen muscles with exercise? Richard Davidson, who for decades has practiced Buddha-style meditation, a form of mental exercise, he says, insists that we can. A trained psychologist based at University of Wisconsin has become the leader of a relatively new field called contemplative neuroscience, the brain science of meditation. Over the last decade, Davidson and his colleagues have produced scientific evidence for the theory that meditation, which is the ancient Eastern practice of sitting and focusing on something, permanently changes the brain for the better. So in this article, it's pretty cool. There's a couple of brain scans showing how the brain changes as a result of meditation. They say that making a habit of meditation can strengthen brain circuits responsible for maintaining concentration and generating empathy. One of the recent studies took novice meditators. It stimulated their limbic system, which is the brain's emotional network, during the practice of compassion meditation. And compassion meditation basically wants to get you to be empathetic and find kindness and feel what they call in Buddhist meditation loving kindness. The study also found that expert meditators showed significantly greater activation of their limbic systems. The monks appeared to have permanently changed their brains to be more empathetic. Fascinating, huh? An earlier study by some of the same researchers found that committed meditators experienced sustained changes in their baseline brain function, meaning they'd change the way their brains operate even outside of meditation. Okay, so there's a little bit more to this, but what I think is most interesting is we're looking at, in the previous article, the genes having some responsibility for your state of depression. Now, we also know that what you focus on in your brain actually affects the gene in your cell. And Bruce Lipton has done a tremendous amount of research on this and shows that our genes are not fixed. They change based on what our environment is, what our thoughts are, how we behave, who we hang around with, and all of the things that are input into our brain. That results in us having a gene change. So, if depression, if they're finding that people who are very depressed have a gene that is responsible for that depression, well, certainly you can't say that the gene caused the depression. The depression may indeed have caused the gene. Now we look at the meditation studies, and of course there's plenty of research to show the effects of meditation and hypnosis and guided imagery and visualization on your brain. But what we're finding out from a scientific basis is that this is permanent change, that once you start changing that wiring, your brain changes in a way that affects your entire day. It isn't just during that time of meditation. So it's interesting in the meditation that they're using compassion meditation. And one of the interesting sessions that I have is called Karma of Kindness. And in that session, I'm having you imagine yourself being compassionate and understanding and really getting to relate to that person on their level and what they're going through. So now you're taking yourself outside of your own problems, troubles, judgments, and you're reaching out to this compassion and finding out what's happening with someone else and creating that connection we need to live a really happy, full life, right? Okay, now let's go back to the very beginning of this. Turn. I like my iPad. It's very fun. And remember this part, that the psychologist Rollo May said that depression is the inability to construct a future.